All right, it's Miss Hannah one more time. So we talked about nouns, both common and proper nouns, and then we talked a little bit about pronouns and how they're different. We also want to talk about verbs, though, because verbs are like another part of the sentence. They're super important. If you don't have um, a verb, you can't have a sentence, right? So we have to have verbs. Verbs are very important. And I like this explanation of verbs because a lot of times we just say verbs are actions. That makes you feel like a verb has to be a word in which you're doing something. But that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes you're inadvertently doing something. And so it can confuse people if you just say they're action words. Um, so I like this example. Verbs are doing words. A verb can express a physical action, jump, and many verbs do. A mental action, like guess, or a state of being, how you are at that moment. Okay. So exactly in the case of existing, it's not really an outright form of action, nor are some mental forms of action. And that's why I don't just like saying they're action words. They are doing words, and I like that idea. So let's make a list here. So let's do physical because that's easiest, I think. Okay. What are some physical action verbs? How about run, jump, eat? These are things you do and they're very apparent you're doing them and you have to try to do them. Okay. Kick, scream, um, bounce like a ball. Uh, let's think of a couple more. Walk, swim, giggle. Again, these take effort to do. They are actions. Um, let's go ahead and say sprint because it's a form of running. I don't know why I'm capitalizing all these. They don't need to be capitalized. I'm just being a goof, I guess. Read. There we go. It's a good one. So these aren't all super big actions. Like reading is a fairly quiet action, but it is an action, right? So these are the physical forms, some physical forms, and this could be a huge list. Physical actions. Let's give you a couple of examples of sentences with physical verbs in them. Sally read to her brother. We have Sally, who is our subject, also our proper noun. She's reading to, her's our pronoun. And she's reading to her little brother. Brother is a common noun. So the only two left are read and to. And to is not a verb. This is the action. Okay. So let's do that again. Alilu slept on my computer. Alilu, she's looking at me now. That's my dog. Is her proper noun name. She's also the subject. What did she do? What was the action she did? She slept. She slept on my computer. Okay. Let's do a couple more. Brent sprinted to work because he was late. Brent, get to work. What did he do? He sprinted. That was his action. That is a verb. Okay. One more. I swam over a mile. That I didn't. I would probably not make it. But swam in this case, it's a past tense, but it's a verb. Verb. Okay. So these are the physical actions I'm talking about. Now, these are all in the past. You can do them in the present. Sally kicks the ball. Quiet. So kicks in this case would be our verb. Alilu eats her treat. What's the action? Eats. So that's, they're right now. They're happening right now. Okay, great. So those are physical actions. I think the mental actions can be harder when you're trying to locate a verb in a sentence. So let's do that one next. Okay. So what are some mental actions that we can think of? I just gave you one, by the way, in that sentence. How about the word think? Think, care. What else? Guess, dream. These are something you're doing inside your head, but you're not necessarily, it's not like a very visible action, right? Okay. These are all things that are happening inside. Think, care, guess, dream, worry, fear, love. And some of these can also be action verbs, like if you're physically caring for somebody. But in this case, these are mental ones. And I'll give you examples too, okay? So, Alilu thought about treats all day. What was the action? Is the action treats? No. Is the action all day? No. About is just a joining word, and we'll talk about that later. Alilu is the person, or the dog in this case, doing it. But thought is your mental action. Okay, that's the verb. All right, and Hannah dreamed of ice cream. Okay. Dreamed doesn't seem like a super active thing to do. So that's why we call it a mental action. It's not something that's very apparent that you're doing it. People can't see you doing it. Okay. Mother Teresa. Actually, I think it's Teresa. Cared deeply. Okay. You can't see necessarily caring, and you can a little. You can tell by people's actions that they care. But it is emotion in this case, a mental emotion that is, in this case, an action. She cared. Mother Teresa did what? She cared. Okay. I worry about my kids. What is the action in this case? Worry, right? My kids is not an action. I is not an action. About is that joining word again. Worry is my verb. Fear me. What is the action? He's asking you to do something. Fear. What is the action? He's asking you to love. Okay? So mental action words can be a little harder. Verbs that you're doing but aren't like physical things that you can kind of picture in your head can be a little bit more difficult, but they are verbs, okay? So we have physical, we have mental, and then we have the state of being. And the state of being can be harder. I think these are people's nemesis verbs, enemies, okay? But it's really not too difficult. A state of being is a kind of a little verb. Am, I am is an example of this. This is a sentence. It has both a subject, I, and a verb, am. It's a state of being. I exist. Some examples of state of being words are am, is, are, were, okay? So if you see these, you might not realize that these are verbs. They are called state of being verbs, okay? I am, are, is, are, were, are state of being verbs, and there's others as well. Okay, let me get you this little graph that I found that's really helpful. State of being verb graph. Let me look that up. Okay, here it is. I'm going to copy it. Copy image. Good. Being sort of a copywriter here. Okay, so our state of being verbs, what do they look like? Picture. Is, am, are, was, were, be, being, and been. Been is B-E-N-N. Bean. Okay. So those words are verbs, and they don't seem like they were verbs, but they are. Am, is, are. I just gave you one. Okay. So I am tired. They were angry. She was frightened. Okay, these are verbs because tired describes this word, but it isn't a verb in this case. Okay, it's a description. Am is the verb in this case. It is the state of being verb. Were is the state of being verb. Was is the state of being verbed. You're like, then what is tired, angry, and frightened? You really don't want to know that right now, do you? If it describes this, it's an adjective. Or an adverb, sorry. If it's an adverb, if it describes a verb. We'll talk about those later. Just know that am, was, were, is, be, to be or not to be, that is the question. Those are all state of being verbs. And they're even trickier than the mental ones because we're not really, they don't feel like actions, right? Just to exist doesn't feel like an action. But it is. If you are hungry, it's not something you can help, but it is sort of an action, right? The state of being hungry is an action. The state of being tired is an action. It's a state of being, okay? The state of being frightened is an action. Your body has reactions when you're frightened, tired, or worried. Bored. If you're bored right now, maybe your eyes are closing, you know, that state of being bored is an action. So am, were, was are those helpers. They help you understand what your state of being is. Okay? So verbs are doing words. Anything that's happening or doing something is a verb in this sentence. She read to her brother. Alilu slept on my computer. Brent sprinted to work. Those are actions that are physical. Alilu thought about treats all day. Hannah dreamed of ice cream. These are mental ones. And then we have our state of being. I am bored. Grammar. I am bored. That's the state of being something. So am would be your verb. I hope that helps you with verbs. Remember, maybe you don't know this, but all a sentence is a subject and a verb. I am, she is, he was are all complete sentences. We have our pronoun, our subject, and we have our verb. Subject, verb, subject, verb. So verbs are very important. If you don't have a verb in your sentence, it's not a sentence. All right, I hope that helped you guys. Please have a good day.